Hopefully you're on. We're here tonight for a regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of Darien Zoning Board of Appeals. If you are in the audience tonight and you wish to speak on an application, please step up to the microphones, identify yourself. The recording devices and the television can't pick you up if you're not speaking directly into the microphone. We generally will make our decisions the night of. If we close the hearing, we'll do deliberations. If you want, you can stay for that part of the process, but you cannot speak during the deliberations. Woody, is the agenda posted on the door? Mm-hmm. We will be following the agenda as is posted on the floor. And without anything further, we'll get started. So one note, there was a continuation of calendar number 19, 2019, PB Architects on behalf of the Sexies, if I'm pronouncing that right, at 42 Beach Drive. That application has been withdrawn. So there will not be any hearing on that application. Next regularly scheduled meeting, public hearing, calendar 1, 2020, Christine and David Self for 45R Old Farm Road. If you're here on that application, we'll continue the application.
Skip it and move on.
Not here. Not here? Okay. We will,
Put it off till a little later and see if they show.
we'll continue the application for
Everybody
tonight.
knew there was
No.
complications.
All
Continue
right.
it.
I apologize if you were here on the self-application. We are going to continue that application to our next regularly scheduled hearing,
March 18th.
March 18th.
March 18th? You're cutting it close there, Woody.
Moving through the agenda quite quickly.
Calendar number 2, 2020, application of Rebecca and Jeff Morrison for 13 Prospect Avenue. If you were here on that application, if you could please stand up. I really, Woody, if they're not here and ready to present, I'm going to continue their hearings.
Yeah, we don't.
We put a lot of time and effort into this, and for applicants not to be in the room.
Start by giving you.
Okay, so since you weren't in the room, you missed the entire beginning of the presentation, which is you need to speak from the podium. You need to identify yourself for the record.
Sure. I'm Rebecca Morrison. I'm the property owner of 13 Prospect Avenue, which is one of the original, obviously, homes on Prospect. It's an Italianate home. It's really lovely. We bought it as we wanted to live close to town. We wanted a home with historical value. I grew up in a house in the 1700s. We still own a 1700s house in Nantucket. And I really cherish old architecture. And I went to grad school for architecture and design at Pratt. I have a master's from there and worked for years for Ralph Lauren designing his stores. So my background, obviously, with both historical structures and with architecture and design, we looked for a long time in Darien before deciding on this house, and it really spoke to us, being, again, close to town, of historical value. But at the same time, the house has its challenges, and we knew that going into it. The house has 5 different levels. There's a basement. The living level is actually in the basement. It's not quite the basement because the land slopes, and so in it goes to the exterior in the back, but that is one level. There was a bad addition that was done in the 80s that's also off the back that is in no great standing. Then if you approach the house from the street, there's only one thing on that level, which is an addition that was done in the 1950s. Again, that has it doesn't flow with anything else in the house. And then there's 2 additional levels on top of that, one being the bedrooms, and one being our master level, and then the additional bedrooms are on the top floor. So it's a challenge to live there with children. It's a challenge that you live there in any portion of life because you're constantly going up and down the stairs. We knew that when buying it. We knew that we'd eventually have to remodel it. We've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what would be best for the house, both for value, for the best flow. We've brought in over 20 architects to even talk to us about it. And we've also brought in real estate agents to say, you know, maybe this project is just way too expensive and maybe we need to move. The word on the street from real estate agents is this house will never sell based off the fact that the flow is so terrible until we basically fix the flow. So having brought in so many architects, even though that's my background myself, everyone keeps on saying is really you need to go back to the original level. You need to go back and put everything, forget the 1950s addition, which is the formal living room, off of the side. What you really need to do in order to get rid of these multiple choppy levels is to bring it back to what was the original level, which was the parlor floor, which is right now our master bedroom level. So it would be putting the staircase back where it originally was, or back to the original, from the street, back to the original floor, and building out that direction. So obviously our intent is to do that. If you've seen this is the proposed entry level, and I can put behind it what was existing.
Why, Ms. Morrison, while you're putting those up there, I note that in your opening statement that you said you had 5 levels.
Yeah.
In your item K, it states you have 6 levels.
6. Well, we have the basement, the what is currently the lower level, the basement, the lower level, the mid-level, the upper, and the upper floor. So we have 5. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So again, these are kind of what's going on right now. There's multiple staircases. Really,
I'm sorry, yeah, you need to speak to the microphone.
no worries. The intent is to eliminate some of these multiple choppy levels and try to put the basement back to being really a basement and bring it back up to what was the parlor floor and build out. We think that we've done this by maintaining that box, which is this original three-bay box on the right-hand side. We've defined the entranceway by furring that out a little bit, by adding pilasters, by adding a double column detail to make sure that that area looks distinct. And then,
Hang on, I'm going to have to interrupt you. Someone's got to, I'll do it, but I can hear that hallway. I'm sorry. It's distracting me. Thank you. No, we need to keep that door open, don't we?
No, it's okay.
No, it's okay. Never
and
mind.
then
Close the door.
using the
Thank you.
details.
Excuse me.
So no worries. And then using the details that are found on the house on the right-hand side to create a wonderful aesthetic on the left-hand side, which is the addition. We haven't gotten rid of the formal living room. We've actually raised the formal living room, and then we've built out from there.
Well,
But obviously-
tell us about the variances that you're looking for.
Well,
What do you want us to do?
So, I mean, obviously, we want to build it the way that we think it should maintain the historical integrity of the house and get it back up to a level of a condition where it's much more livable and we'll be able to sell it in the future. Obviously, our intent is to, if we do this project, is to live there for a long time. We think it only adds historical value to the street. The main variance reasons we need a variance is the setback. If you go to the Historical Society, which I have done, and done as much research on the house as I possibly can, Prospect Avenue originally had a 20-foot setback. That staircase had to exist. I can't find a picture of it. The town doesn't have a picture of it. But in order to get to what was the original front door, which is existing, it's in our hallway and on that parlor floor level, that staircase had to have been there. So we're zoned for a 30-foot setback, but at one time, and it's included in your packet, Prospect was a 20-foot setback.
Okay. Dimensions of what, do you have elevations?
Yes. That's the front, and I can pull up the back in a second. Do you want me to put the back down below?
Yeah, that would work.
You can see the 80s addition, which was probably once where it was a porch of some form in nature, and they just, because it was on slab, and that's one of the other reasons that we really can't go down, we really need to go up, is that no one, when you bring in a lot of engineers, which we have done as well, no one knows exactly where the foundation extends to, so they really are afraid of really touching. And the lower living level right now is on slab, so all those pipes are buried somewhere beneath ground, and so we are extremely afraid to touch or try to trench at that level, knowing full well that we're going to hit something that we don't want to hit.
Where is the 80s addition on the elevation you're showing?
It's not because it's new, but the 80s edition is here. Yes.
You can hold that up, please.
Yeah, just
Put it on the
pull it up
easel
so we
or
can see it.
whatever.
In the back, it's this right here.
And-
It's like
Okay, I see that.
right, that. So there's,
Okay, but
One
you
of the
don't
other
need,
problems-
you don't need a variance to build back there, do they, Woody? That's
No.
within the premise.
Now, she's a,
So I think what we're struggling with is what specifically is a variance request? And then in order to approve a variance request, you've got to tell us what your hardship is, and then why what you're proposing is the minimum adjustment necessary to grant that variance.
so what the real reason, and Woody, please help me out if I'm wrong, but the reason we need one is that we want to continue that front porch onto the right, which, is, so right now there's no porch on the right side, and that roof line is a different roof line, so we want to take that roof line up in order to make that room come up, in order to put everything in one level, and then extend that porch, and that porch won't meet that 30-foot setback.
Okay, so the porch is the part of this project that requires the variance?
The porch in the front and the front steps.
Okay.
I think there's actually three items. Do you have an existing and proposed elevation that clarifies that? I think you did some color stuff before.
Do you want this?
Elevation drawings that might show existing versus proposed.
Existing. That's existing.
And then
I gotta stand up.
in your staff report, there should be a survey that shows the setback line. So I think there's three elements. You're looking to extend the porch to the left, I believe.
Yes.
There's an existing porch on the right-hand segment of the house that they want to extend to the left.
This exists, right? This would be new, and this.
I'm sorry, you have to speak from the podium. I know it's difficult.
So, no worries. So on the left-hand side, that whole porch is new, and
Okay.
the steps going up are new. The existing is to the right.
And then the left wing of the house is being raised 3 feet, 4, 2, what are...
About 4 feet.
Okay.
The three different elements of
Okay, so,
variance requests.
all right, so I'm looking at the pictures that we have, Woody. So this top left picture, that left side of the house is going up about 4 feet, and some of that's going to be in the setback space.
So we're increasing the volume in the setback. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the roof line would now marry the existing roof line to the right. Right now, if you look at all those pictures, there is 5 different roof lines to the house, and that's another quirky feature of the architecture, based off of the amount of additions that's been done.
So you say it's going up 4 feet?
I'd have to look on the plans. Can I?
All right, so, okay. Here, I'll use mine, instead of using Chuck's. So just from this picture, tell us, is it coming up to this roof line?
No, the next one.
This roof line?
Correct, the same as the porch.
This, the same as the porch?
Up to the porch?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's going to go up there?
Nothing's going to go up there.
Oh.
The formal living room is going to be raised. That whole
It's gonna be
room.
a higher ceiling.
No, because the living room, the formal living room on the left-hand side is going to be reconstructed, because right now, that's at a mid-level. That's at a level that nothing else in the whole entire house
Is on
goes
that
to.
level.
I understand.
It's a
What
room,
is this
it's a
room?
box,
The-
right.
the
That's a
living room?
box, yes, that's a formal living room. It's a box onto itself with no connection to the rest of the house.
So you have to step up or step down to get into that?
Correct. Well, actually, it's on the same level as the front steps, but then basically, what they did is that what you're seeing is the front door now. That was an addition that was put on in the 50s as well. So what they did, if you enter that house, they've made it a split level. So you've got a choice as soon as you enter the vestibule to either go down 4 or 5 steps to the living level, and then up 2 more steps to the 80s addition in the back, or you have to go up 5 steps to the mid-level. So we're trying to get rid of that whole idea of this house, which was in the 50s, was a way that they did it, was they made it a split level.
Okay.
But it doesn't make a lot of sense. Because it doesn't, like, again, it doesn't, that room, there is no connection with that room with the rest of the house.
So the porch on the right, you're extending that all the way over to the new living room?
Correct. Because that living room's going to be raised to the level of that particular floor.
Are you enclosing the porch at all?
No.
No.
I'm struggling big time.
Yeah. What I'm struggling with is the necessity of the porch. So again, when we look at these, we have to find that what we're granting is the minimum adjustment necessary. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with that tonight, but I am. I think it's clear that there's a hardship with the change of the zoning regulations, and I think, Chuck, did you point out that there's 2 front yard setbacks? Was that on this property?
No.
No, okay.
No. That's
but-
my farm.
But what I'm really struggling with is how, I mean, I could see, a variance where lifting that part of the property makes sense, but I'm having a hard time seeing how that additional volume in that setback area of the porch sort of is the minimum.
If you didn't raise the porch, then you'd have this really quirky area below the window line, because the window line would be either really high or it couldn't marry the other side. It wouldn't look
It wouldn't match up
aesthetically.
with the...
It wouldn't look right. Like you'd have about 4 or 5 feet, 5 or 6 feet of clapboard below the windows.
But wouldn't the new window line equal the old window line?
No, because it's being raised.
I know, but you're raising it, the other ones are higher than the ones that are there now. In other
Right,
words,
so you're raising it to the same height as the ones that are there now.
that's what I'm trying to say.
So you're raising it to the same height as there is now, you're raising that area, right? So if you raise the window line, currently it's a lot lower, right? The existing window line's a lot lower. So you raise that window line, you're gonna have 5 feet of clapboard underneath the window. Because there's no porch, there's nothing. So now you don't have anything, right? So you don't, aesthetically, it's gonna look very off.
I'm wondering, I know you worked with a lot of different architects, and you're an architect yourself. I'm just wondering if there's a different architectural detail that didn't extend into the front yard as much that you could utilize, that would be less volume in that front yard setback.
I think that you really want to be able to marry the left to the right to make sure that it's aesthetically pleasing. And that if you didn't do that, that the character of the street and the character of the house would really change. The idea is to take those additions that weren't properly done in the first place and really bring it back to the character of the existing Italianate architecture. If you look at Italianate architecture, which I put some examples on here, the porch does usually extend all the way across. And so if you don't do that, you're really just, you're compromising the type of architecture that does exist in Italian architecture, Victorian architecture. So, I mean, I don't, it wouldn't look right aesthetically for the street. And again, those windows would be at a height, like unless you want to increase the window size, those windows, well, first of all, you couldn't, because there would be then, based off of the level of the floor in that room, you'd then have to put some sort of transom window down below, which wouldn't look proper either. Or you'd have to have 5 foot of clapboard before you'd actually hit the window line.
Okay. Questions, thoughts?
I just want to be clear, just so I understand, Mike, I understand the roof line on the
Yep.
left. I got that now. And what are the other two variances that they're requesting are exactly what? What are you, just so I'm clear on this?
The new porch in the front yard,
Porch in the front yard, running
and,
along the
What's
left
this?
side?
yep,
Yep.
I don't
And
understand.
and a wooden staircase that extends toward the road.
which if they made that out of masonry,
Correct.
would not be an issue.
Right.
Why wouldn't Mrs. Morrison?
Why wooden?
Yeah.
If you look even at every single house on the street, they're all wooden. It's again, going with Italian architecture. We're trying to marry every detail that we know that exists in this Victorian phase and make sure, I mean, if it wasn't, cottage style is the other style that was built in that era, but cottage style did have that type of masonry. But cottage style, it doesn't fit in Italian architecture. It's its own type of Victorian architecture onto its own. It was mostly found in Cape Cod.
And you understand that if it was masonry, you wouldn't need a variance for that.
I really feel like it should marry with other elements of the house.
So you do understand that?
Yes.
Well,
I mean, you should extend the detail that was already found on the right and bring it out. So I mean, the same sort of cross-hatched board that, you know, is underneath, I want to extend it to the other side, and I want it to look right.
Okay, so well, this may be a deliberation issue, but so one variance is the more volume in the setback with the living room, right? The second variance is the setback with the porch and the wooden stairs from 30 feet. And I understand it was 20 feet, I get that. Now, let's go to the third. That's 2.
No, that's 3. It's the stairs, the
Yeah.
porch,
Oh, and the porch comes over.
Yeah.
Okay, right, got it.
and the raised roof.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
And you probably said this already, but how long have you lived there?
Almost 10 years. And it's taken me this long to figure out exactly. I have a whole nother set of plans that I've had sitting there that I decided after looking at it several times over that it wasn't worth building. And again, we've gone through the process of trying to think about selling it because we know that this is not going to be a cheap solve. But at the same time, we love the architecture, we love the house, and we want to do it right.
Is it your intent to stay in the house after
Yes.
this
Yes.
renovation?
We go through
It's
this.
contagious over here.
We're in it for a long time. I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I've heard that.
but I mean, again, we want to do it right.
Okay. Let's, if there are no other questions regarding the 3 variances, can we go to hardship, please? We understand that the zoning regulations relative to the porch have changed the setback. It was 20 feet. It's now 30 feet. I heard you say that. And let's go to the hardship with regard to, and as the chair says, the minimum adjustment necessary for the raising of the roof 4 feet to match the porch line. What is the hardship there?
I mean, the hardship is the fact that nothing in this, we're trying to make it back to that original level, that particular addition in the 1950s, like I said, didn't match anything else in that house. So it's an impossible house to try to raise a family when you're trying to, you feel like you're living in a brownstone in New York City because you're constantly screaming up and down. And that that was the original floor level. Why they ever built it on street level when it didn't match anything else, I'm unclear. It wasn't around. But it really should go back up to the level and match the roof lines. There should be less roof lines, and it should match the level of what is clearly there. And those stairs did exist at some point in order to get to that front door.
Let me ask a different question. Woody, are we reducing any nonconformity by reducing the number of levels on this house?
No.
We're going to maintain the 5 levels?
Well, there wouldn't be a violation
No,
if they have 5 levels.
We're reducing one
If
level.
they had 5 floors total, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, it's,
In this case, because they're split, like left and right and left and right.
But you will be reducing one level because there will no longer be that level at the formal living room level because that level will be brought up.
But that's not a floor.
issue.
Okay. So we're leveling the house, but we're not reducing the number of floors of the house.
okay.
Yeah, so just try to back into a hardship.
Me too, because I hear what you just said, and I heard what Ms. Morrison said, but was there a hardship in there? Okay, that answers the
Tough
question.
to find.
Was-
Yeah. right.
Were there previous zoning board of appeals made
That's
for
a good
this
question.
house that were approved like 10 years ago to do something like add that addition on or something?
Woody, do you know if there were any previous ZBA applications?
I
There's
don't,
plans
probably.
in the town. There's plans for the 80s addition, but again, that was probably at one point because I know it's on slab. That probably was a portion of a porch that they just brought on, but that's in the back. It's
That
not
was in the
front.
back, right. So
And that's the only thing that exists in this file.
Okay.
probably
Did
the
you-
only part would be the 50s edition that we're talking about raising.
That's not in the
4 feet.
file, and it's not with the Historical Society either.
Do our files go back to the 50s?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could
I've
research some
I've
more
tried
and
to-
try to find out. if
Yeah,
there
I've
were.
tried to pull them based
I
off
can't
of
really
everything I
answer.
found.
Okay.
There are not.
Well, I mean, I'm struggling with the variance I'm struggling with this, and if I'm struggling with and I didn't mean to say variance,
Raising of the roof?
yeah, the hardship with that, not variance, I meant to say hardship. I'm struggling with that, which automatically segues into the minimum adjustment necessary, so I'm not seeing, I don't know. And then, let's move on to the porch. The hardship, I got this wooden thing, the wooden stairs, I got that. Let's talk about the porch. What is your hardship about the porch?
I mean, it really needs to happen in order, again, to marry the details of the original house from the left side to the right side. Because again, if you don't do that, if you don't add that porch, you'll have to put some sort of a transom window in what would now be the basement. And so you'll have 2 separate windows in the front.
Okay.
It won't look, I mean, I don't think you're going to like the way that looks.
I understand completely what you just said.
But it sounds to me like the hardship is that you have a sort of quirky house.
The house, I mean, if I went and said, like I said, originally I said I've priced it with general contractors. I've spent 3 or 4 years on this. But if, even the kitchen's in the basement, it has 8-foot ceilings, and it literally is the size of a 12 by 12 box. If I try to go out from that, or if I try to expand that direction, I need to somehow put steel beams in there, and I try to break open those walls. They're not sure it's going to stand because they don't know how old that foundation is. Like I said, every single pipe is on slab, underground, in slab. So the beauty of this design, the other beauty of this design is I'm building up. So every pipe now, I can make a connection from the basement level and bring it up versus somehow trench and try to find the connection down. I don't know where those connections are, and everyone that has tried to walk through it, from an engineer to a plumber, they're just baffled about where those connections actually
I understand.
go.
Okay.
So,
You know, I would like to say that I'd like to be able to preserve as much of the house if I go up versus going down. If I go down, I don't know what I'm going to hit.
So would it be fair to say that these are improvements to the building code?
To the
So
building.
bringing the house into more compliance with the building code?
I would think so. I mean, it's old pipes, it's old, everything's old. So I mean, yes, it is going to be much more up to code than it currently is stating.
I mean, that was the finding in one of the cases we just reviewed where, that can be used as a reduction of nonconformity.
But we don't know that as a fact.
Well, I mean, I've
No,
had.
we'd need
Yeah,
we'd need testimony on that from a.
I have one comment to make. Please try not to talk over people.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sergeant. Look, I think that the best way to approach this would be to have Woody do some research, see if there are other variance applications that we have on file. Take a little time and really nail down the hardships and the minimum adjustment. And Woody, do you work with applicants on that?
Sure.
Okay, so Woody can help you with that and work with you on that to try and really flesh those out, because we have some, and this is sort of an aside, but we have some recent case law that sort of makes our job a lot more difficult. And so we're just trying to, follow the rules as they've been presented to us. And I think if you took a little bit more time and really flesh these things out, it would be super beneficial to you.
And it might not be a bad idea to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah.
Can I just say something too?
Sure.
Jeff Morrison, husband, 13 Prospect. Listening to it, there's a little bit of confusion of exactly what's being done here. And I think the first thing that's being done seems pretty simple. It's the front stairs, the variance going out. That's original stairs are there. There's no way you could get up to the porch to get in, so the front steps need to be moved out. It should be wooden, not masonry, for the design. Second thing is the living room on the left. Basically, if you think about the box is going to be raised up. And why is it going to be raised up? The ceiling height's going to be the same. It's going to be raised up because that floor needs to match the other floor, which is the existing parlor level as you walk in. So when you raise that box up, that's where you talk about the roof line going over. And then when you think about, as you raise that box up, what's beneath it, it's, okay, well, what's there now? And it's much, much lower. There's, the foundation, what you see, up to about 3 feet, and then it's the clapboard, and then the windows looking at normal height versus the box. But if you raise that whole box up and don't put the porch there, what Rebecca is saying is that you're just going to see a really odd amount of clapboard, or you're going to have to grow gigantic trees in front of it to cover up that clapboard. So if you look at the front, the porch basically makes sense in that it matches up what is off to the original off to the left. It's like you say, well, I don't want it to look the same. I want to preserve the original part of the building. So when somebody drives down the street, that's the original part. There's the new part, but it's not so obvious. Right now, the new part is very sort of modern looking versus the old part that it really doesn't aesthetically look very good. By putting the porch on to the left, you're going to see that it actually, it does match up, but Rebecca has put in different columns and makes it different enough that you can tell, okay, that's the old section, that there's the new section. But it's not so glaring because you have the porch that continues the whole front. So those are sort of the three items. The steps seems like an easy done deal. The roof line is to match up to the original parlor level. And the variance for the porch in the front, that's to match the porch on the left and not make it look stupid with just the clapboard there.
Right, and I think our issue is, though, we don't really get the leeway to say, hey, that doesn't look great, you can go ahead and build something else into that front yard setback. And so that's why I was wondering if there are other architectural things that we could do that aren't putting as much volume, or scaling back the width of the porch if we need it for aesthetics, but we don't necessarily need it to be able to fit 2 rocking chairs and a porch swing. So that's what I was trying to get at is, okay, why is this the minimum adjustment necessary? And that's why I think you need to work with Woody to come up with specifically what the hardships are for each of those requested variances.
Isn't the hardship the setback amount for the porch? the reason why the porch is going in is to match the left side. And you're saying, what's the hardship for that? Well, it's basically the porch needs to match what's already there on the right. It's not like we're adding something that's going even closer to the road. It's the porch on the left, the original, is already at the same distance. We're not going any further closer to the road.
Yeah, no, so I understand what your position on the hardship is, but then you get to the next tier, which is that the minimum adjustment necessary? Do you need a 6-foot wide porch? And if you do, explain that to us and tell us why we need that.
I think the town historian was really concerned about the elements of the left and the right and everything. I mean, going back to her, she was very concerned that everything actually was of historical nature and that the elements actually matched. And without doing that, you're not going to have it. So you're asking for something, you're asking me to go back and study it, but we're appeasing the town historian as well. So, I mean, we've gone back and forth with her several times and come back to a design that she actually agrees that is beneficial to the actual house and to the street.
Like if you said that the porch is, say, 6 feet wide, and say, and I think what you're saying is like, why do you need 6? Why can't it just be 3?
Correct.
Right? Well, 3 is not going to match what's on the other side. We're not adding anything additional closer to the road than what's on the left. And actually, honestly, the porch is pretty narrow. You can't even have a porch swing that faces and goes front to back as it is now. It's not that wide of a porch. So
How wide is the porch?
6 feet? I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's not that wide.
Yeah,
So if you shrunk it down, say like, okay, let's not make it, say it's 6, let's make it 3. It would basically be enough to walk down the width,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm trying to be helpful.
Yep.
And what we need is we can't have approximates, because we run into issues with approximates. We can't have guesstimates, so we need to know how high the roof's going to be, how many feet above where it is currently, how wide the porch is.
You have that in the plans. You have all that in the plans. All the plans are to scale, and you have that.
Okay, I didn't see, when we asked
have-
that
you have a
question,
whole
I think we
set-
got an answer to
No,
that,
we
didn't
didn't. I think what the board may be thinking, and I certainly don't want to speak for them, but I think the chair's comment and Mr. DeLuca's comment relative to speaking to maybe a lawyer and having some of his thoughts in terms of being able to answer the questions that we need to have answered very clearly, which are, what are the variances exactly that you're seeking, distances and so forth, and what are the minimum adjustments necessary. We understand completely what your objective is. I think I get that, but that's not a basis of which we can approve. So I believe the chair has suggested maybe continuing this hearing to give you an opportunity to work with Woody and getting some outside counsel, if you will, from somebody who may have a better idea on how to represent clearly exactly what it is that we need to approve. That's what I think we're saying.
Okay, I thought that was in the application.
Board members are welcome to comment on my comment.
Yeah, I mean, I see a couple of different dimensions for the porch. One's 6'10" on one side, and one's 6'2" on the other side. So I don't, yes, I have plans in front of me, and they have specs, and they are to scale, but they have different numbers, and I'm not sure what the right number is. So we need to approve, if it's 6'2", we need to approve 6'2", and then you've got to submit a survey to the town that's saying that you built it 6'2". Variances are, there's no wiggle room.
The survey is there. We have the survey. It is there.
No, after you build the project, you have
Correct.
to actually do an as-built
Right,
survey,
I
and that
understand.
porch has to be the dimensions of the
Absolutely.
approved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We would make sure that happened.
But so we need to know what the dimension is, and right now I see 2 different dimensions on the
I
plans.
didn't do the plan, so I was guessing that it was 6 feet, but it's there. I don't.
So, but when you ask, no, it's fine, and I'm trying to sort of help you through this.
Yes.
You have to ask specifically, so when you ask for a variance, you say, I need a 6'2" by 10-foot high porch that's going to be built in the front yard setback.
Yeah.
And, those are the things that we need specific numbers. Yeah.
Right.
And then the roof height, we are raising it, it's existing at,
The 6 foot, sorry. The leader line that's pointing to 6'10" is encompassing the whole porch. The 6'10" with the leader line is putting below. The 6'2" is the leader line for the porch. Sorry, I can't see it from when the plan is up front and I'm below. But it does show exactly where the porch line is. If you follow
So
that leader line.
which is the dimension you're asking for a variance for? Okay.
And the current one is 6.
6'10" goes from here, which is all the way back. This is a different leader line. Because
You gotta, if you want to turn that towards yourself a little bit, you can turn it and speak from the mic. Sorry.
the 6'10" extends further back on that line.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit.
6'2" is what we're looking for.
So 6'10" existing, 6'2" new.
Okay.
6'10".
Do you happen to know how much the width of the porch is from the old to the,
It's on there, so you have to
It's on there
calculate it.
somewhere.
So you have to go
have to add it
7, 4,
up.
7, you'd have to add those up.
have that, okay.
Okay. I would strongly advise you to continue this. We can close it and certainly deliberate and vote, but I would strongly recommend that you continue this and work with Woody to flesh some of this stuff out. With that, would you like to continue the hearing, or would you like to close the hearing?
Let's close it up, yes.
Okay. Is there anyone else here that wishes to be heard on this application? Okay.
We
Okay.
submitted, there are a couple of letters from neighbors that weighed in, but I'm sure you've seen those.
Okay.
So you're not aware of any opposition to your project?
No,
No, there's
we
no
did
opposition.
email.
Here's another.
The town historian has looked at it and felt that you're doing something that's consistent.
The
with
town
what
historian is
you've
happy with the plans.
done. And the architectural review board, have they taken a look at it all?
That I don't know.
Don't know? Okay. You realize if we close the hearing, that's it. I mean, we can't take any other evidence from you.
Then keep it
yeah,
open.
Oh,
Sorry.
I thought you were closing the meeting.
No. If
No,
we
no, no,
Close the
sorry.
hearing, that means we're done,
Oh.
and we'll deliberate
Tonight.
tonight. And I think the chair was suggesting that maybe that would,
We continue it so we can get the research from Woody and we can get additional testimony from you guys.
so it's keeping the hearing open. You're done, you're finished tonight, but we're keeping the hearing open and carrying it over to next month so we can finish it up.
So that you can fill in the blanks.
Supplement the record. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and continue the hearing till March 18th. All right. You gotta put that away. I need some space. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I noticed that the selves did appear. You had earlier, I think, determined to
We've continued.
carry that over to March 18.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's not going to be,
Heard tonight.
No.
the item was called before, but I guess you guys weren't here, prepared, or whatever.
Sorry, we were in the room downstairs.
Oh, I went to the wrong place.
So we've continued that hearing over to March 18th.
Is there any way you consider? Because we were.
It's already been continued.
It's already been continued. We already ruled on it. I'm sorry. On to calendar number 3, 2020, the application of Mark LeBeau for 180 Middlesex Road. If you're here on that application, if you'd please come forward.
We were told that we were not the first. Woody?
Yeah, the first hearing withdrew their application. That happens sometimes.
Okay.
We've called you, Mark, yep.
Evening
evening, everyone. Mark Lebo with Williams Seymour and Associates. Tonight I am representing Tyler Lifton and Mary Connell Lifton at 180 Middlesex Road. And with me tonight is our architect, Kirby Cameron, our structural engineer, Tim DeBartolomeo, and one of the owners of Mary Connell Lifton. Before we get started, I'd like to submit for the record letters of support of our application from 3 of our neighbors. I have 2 sets here. I'll give one to the board and one to Woody for the P&Z, for the ZBA file. I'd like to start out by just summarizing the way we approached this application, because it is, as we know, an antique home. Parts of it date back to 1732, but not all of it. There was a publication put out by the Darien Historical Society in 1980 called Darien Observed, a Guide for Our Future Heritage. I don't know if any of you have that or read it or seen it.
Very familiar with it.
In there are a couple of quotes that I'd like to read to you that kind of summarize the way we approach this. The first one is by Carl Sandburg. It says, "If we wish to have a future with greater meaning, we must concern ourselves with all that is worth preserving from our past as a living part of the present." Emphasis on living part. The second quote comes from somebody, I had to Google him. His name is Felix Frankfurter. It turns out that he was a
Supreme Court Justice.
Supreme Court Justice, yes, who served from 1939 to 1962. And in that same publication, he's quoted as saying, "Unless we keep the stream of the past with living significance for the present, we not only have no past, but we have no present." So I think it's important to take that into consideration here because, again, as I say, that's how we approach this. So just to review some of the elements of the application, we can kind of break this down, I think, into 4 primary elements. The first being, try to, it's a little hard to point to things with the thing that far away. But, so, we have these additions in the back, a very small portion of which this addition to the rear of the building is forward of the front yard setback. Now, we've seen this, I think we've seen this before, and we all recognize the hardships involved with building in addition to the back of the house, portions of which lie forward of the front yard setback. We following?
We follow you.
Everybody good? Okay. The second part of the application, it would be, I would direct you to these AC units over here. Now, normally, I know the board is not always, don't want to grant this variance, but I'd like to point out an idiosyncrasy in the zoning regulations where if you provide a separation distance from the principal structure of 5 feet, the AC units would become accessory structures and would only be subject to the 10-foot accessory structure setback. So for instance, if we were to put these 5 feet away from the new addition back here, we could go to 10 feet from the property line rather than the minimum 15 feet. So here, we have placed them at 10 feet. The problem is we're not 5 feet from the building because we don't have quite enough room. But one of the letters of support is from the neighbor on that side, and we believe that with proper screening and shielding and things like that, it would not pose any sort of adverse effect to the neighbor on that side. The third element of our application is the front portico. Currently, and I'm going to flip over the exhibit in a moment, the front portico is centered on what was the original 25-foot-ish by 25-foot-ish footprint of the 1732 structure. And so it was centered on that. In 1790, 1780? Oh, it's 17, I'm thinking 1890. I got all my, there's so many dates.
What's a decade here or there?
There's so many, so many
Going back to the
dates, so many
1700s.
dates involved with this price. So, thank you for correcting me. But so in 1780, a 12-foot wide addition was put onto this side of the house, which resulted in the front door being off center.
How do you know that?
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
want to know.
thank you to
1780.
the owner and actually the prior owners
Back from
who
1780.
who documented this stuff with the Historical Society, probably with the town historian at one point, at some point over the years and things. And
Excuse me.
there's just a tremendous amount of documentation on this. And, you know, granted, I can't say it was done in January of 1780 or whatever, and we'll circa everything, and, you know, just these are approximate dates,
That's okay.
except for the more modern things that we were able to get absolute documentation on. And then, of course, the main part, and the part that I think is going to cause the most consternation, is the additional second-story bulk within the front yard setback. Now, I think it's safe to say that after having come up with several different alternatives, options, this, that, and the other thing, what we presented to you, we believe, is the least amount of bulk within the setback of all the design concepts that had been developed prior to submitting our application to you.
So this would be the minimum adjustment necessary.
We believe so, yes, because again, as I stated, I think any of the other designs were actually resulted in greater bulk in the setback.
Okay.
So, I prepared this little exhibit today, again, to kind of illustrate, and I have some reductions, and that been a little easier to follow along, although I
There,
don't
we'll
think
pass
I
it.
made enough for everybody.
It's okay. We can share.
There's plenty there.
One down there. One there. We can share and they can share. How many do we have?
So again, as I was saying, in one of the comments that we had received from the town historian,
Oh, we do have enough. We do have enough.
basically
Everything good?
said that the,
Sorry.
let me find the.
Mark, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
You said that there are other plans that were done. Were those submitted to the
No.
town? Okay,
No, because we didn't feel we had a chance of getting them approved.
okay.
My understanding was the other plans were more bulk built into the setback, and you
Correct.
reduced that. So
Yes.
what's your?
You got to talk from the podium.
Yeah,
You're good.
She'll get up and Curtly will do her
So what you're
architectural element.
proposing is your interpretation of the minimum adjustment necessary.
Correct.
Good.
Okay. So one of the things, you know, we did receive, it's important that you know that we have tried desperately for months. And we understand that Marion Castells has been ill and unavailable, but we have, and we want her input, and we want to be sensitive to the things that she has to offer. She was able to submit a letter to Woody on Monday, I believe, it's dated February 10th. And one of the things she says in the opening paragraph is that the home has remained amazingly intact since 1732. And part of the reason why I developed this exhibit here was to say that that's not really accurate. You know, we have the original 1732 footprint in yellow. There was a porch back here. The reddish color is the 1780 addition. In 1890, there was a shed dormer added to the second story in the back. And finally, in 1995, this addition was added. as the result of a variance application which the board approved. So certainly in 1995, the board recognized that there are hardships associated with this structure and its position on the property.
What is that diagonal?
Yeah.
lot?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's actually where the setback passes through the footprint of the house.
Oh.
So everything towards the bottom of the page is within the front yard setback, and everything above the line on the page is behind the front yard setback.
And Middlesex Road is at the top of the page.
Middlesex Road is at the bottom of the page.
Bottom of the page.
The front of the
Ah.
house is at the bottom of the page.
Gotcha.
And that is the front yard setback as measured actually from the center line of Middlesex Road, because we have the deficient right-of-way width, which again contributes to the hardships.
Yeah, so I guess you didn't have to get a variance in 1732, huh?
No, I think it, not only did it predate zoning, it predated Darien,
It would have been in Stanford.
you know?
Yeah,
yes.
that's right.
Yeah, so,
So may I ask?
sure.
So we've established you've established the minimum adjustment necessary for the most, what you may think is our most difficult variance to approve. Okay, I get that. So, just out of curiosity, did you review this variance that was granted by ZBA in 1995? Did you review that variance?
I did, and I have it in the file.
And I'd like to know I'd like to know two things. I'd like to know what your particular hardship is at this time, and I'd like to know, just because I'd like to know,
Okay.
what were the hardships, that granted this variance in 1995?
Well, the hardships are actually outlined, enumerated in the item K.
Yep.
But I'd be happy to read through them with you.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So if
Am I just so
turn to page 2, I've enumerated 3 hardships in there. Changes to and creation of the zoning regulations and the zoning map since the lot was created and the home built. The long-standing non-conforming location of the home with respect to the front yard setback. Architectural challenges and preservation of historical elements, including the substantial central chimney, windows, and other architectural elements. If we go to the 19, and again, to that I will add the deficient right-of-way width of Middlesex Road, which increases the setback upon us. So it's not just a straight 40-foot setback from the property line, it's 65 feet from the center line of the right-of-way.
But
So-
that's going to be common to every house on Middlesex Road. No. I mean, it's not unique to this house.
No, but it contributes to its nonconformity and actually makes it more nonconforming, say, than it might otherwise be. So in, let's see, in 1995, it's not, the hardship in this case is that the house and its additions were constructed well before the enactment of any building or zoning codes. In addition, Mr. Carnahan, who was the then owner, and I believe you purchased the home from, correct? Yes. Okay. Believes that Middlesex Road may have been altered in the past, further exacerbating the front yard condition. Early photographs show a higher and narrower road relative to the house. The current owners, meaning the Carnahans, or the immediately previous owners to the Liftons, the current owners and their predecessors have done this building and its original builder great honor and respect by preserving it, and they would like to continue to do so as much as possible in their plans for expansion. They have strived to maintain the historic lines and scale of the house while attempting to gain some of the standard amenities enjoyed by many homes today. Now, I could talk a little bit about the architectural challenges, but I think that would be better addressed by our architect, Kirtley Cameron. But if you have any other questions with respect to the actual zoning and survey-related items, I'd be happy to answer those questions now.
Well, I guess the one really glaringly obvious question is why this can't be built in the existing fairly substantial setback area, buildable envelope, excuse me.
There, because the existing footprint is, I mean, there's.
But you could get the same amenities that you're looking to get out of this house by building in
Okay.
a conforming location, right?
Michael, I think that's one of the things that I think the architect could better address.
Okay.
But just to give you an overview, what would ultimately end up happening is that the existing footprint would become a relic, and they wouldn't be living in it, and that's what they want to do. They want to live in it.
Okay.
So, but at this point, I guess at this
Let
point,
me ask you just two more questions. You've got a few things on your survey here that are to be removed. Are any of
Yes.
those items non-conforming?
The porch on the westerly, here, let me flip over to the survey. There is primarily just this porch on the side, the west side of the house here, would be the only thing that's being removed that's not conforming.
Presumably that AC unit on the front of the house? That's
Well, the
being-
AC unit, as I said, that's one of the ones that we would consider, that we were hoping we could relocate here. So it would still end up in a non-conforming location based on what we're proposing, but we're not.
It's more conforming than it currently is.
Yes.
How many square feet is the house now, and how many
Well,
square feet?
again, I'll have Kirtley
Okay.
Cameron answer that, since that's more of an architectural related question. Any other
I'm good.
technical or overall questions or anything? Okay, at this point, I'll turn the presentation over to Kirtley Cameron.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you all for your time and consideration. My name is Kirtley Cameron, as Mark said. I'm the Lifton's architect. I have a very small practice out of Bedford, New York. I do a lot of work on old homes. I live in an 18th century house. I served for 12 years on the Bedford Village Historic District Review Board, and I'm a past president of the Board of Directors of the Bedford Historical Society. I'm going to talk really briefly a little bit about the design process and how we got to the design that's proposed in front of you. And then I'm going to address a little more specifically the feedback from the staff questions and from Marion, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. I've been working with Mary Connell and Tyler for about a year now. I would say we started looking at this property, looking at all the options, including demolition and new construction within the setback. They really wanted to understand what all the options were. That was never the preference, but to sort of understand what the premium was for the renovation. When we committed to the renovation, as Mark alluded to, we've tried a number of iterations. I'd say there were two models that we really explored, and I'm going to actually contradict you a little bit and say we did explore the one that was more of a connection within the setback, that connected to the back of the house, that didn't cross over the setback line, and that was lower, and that had less impact on the existing structure. And the reason that we did not pursue that was, as Mark alluded to, because what we ended up with was sort of this relic of a museum in the front and the living space in a new connected house. And that's just not, from a design standpoint, and I understand that's not but from where I'm coming from, what the Liftons wanted was to live in the old part of the house, for the amazing central fireplace to be the absolute core of their everyday family life in their kitchen. They love that part of the house. And we were not achieving that with an addition that simply connected to the back of the house within the setback. So we did pursue what I'm calling more of an integrated renovation, which is a bigger impact, but integrating the new with the old more fully. We had a couple of design goals as we did that. One of them was to preserve historic elements, albeit a lot of them on the interior, including the windows. The scale and the finish of the really just two original front rooms, but three very, very old 18th century front rooms, and a lot of that millwork. Not a lot of it is left that is original. I think there may be one room that still has original floorboards, but those, and then really, really importantly to us, the fireplace. At the same time, my goal as the architect was to help them create a functional, a comfortable, a more energy efficient, a safer, a more to code, especially with the stairs, living space that met their needs from a family perspective and had a lot more light and had more access to the outside. And to achieve this in the most cost-effective and space-effective way. That said, the changes that we're proposing are not insignificant. We recognize that. But I think we also believe that for this house, this building, to continue to be used as a residence, I think significant changes are needed. And hopefully that will lead to this building being maintained for many, many years to come. At this phase, what you're seeing are schematic designs. There's focus on the exterior elevations, hopefully giving you the information that you need. The floor plans are developed, but are not fully developed to the construction document level. I think what you see is the result of many iterations of trying many roof lines, roof heights, eaves, window placement, all of that. What you don't see on these plans is the opportunities that we have found and taken and will continue to look for to preserve many of the interior elements, which really is where a lot of the historic value of the house is. With that, I'll turn briefly to addressing some of the feedback items and then take whatever your questions are. From the staff questions, if it's okay, I'm going to jump to item 4 because it really gets to the heart of the roof height and addresses correctly why we ended up there and sort of answers some of the other points. Raising the roof 3 feet 11 inches obviously does create much needed space on the second floor, but the primary reason that we're proposing that is so that we can step back the roof to the addition. The roof of the addition is 22 feet above grade, still a relatively modest 1.5 to 2-story house, and we have raised the front roof 18 inches above that. And we want to do the elevation. 18 inches above that so that it can step back, and that is, thank you. What we did not want to do is have a roof behind the original house that you either saw the peak above the front of the house or even beyond, even if it wasn't connected. I think it's worth noting that the 22-foot roof peak height of the new addition still has knee walls at just about 3 feet 3 inches. So this is not a big second floor. This is still the slope. With the shed dormers, we do have a 7-foot ceiling at the eave line, but the plate at the height of that framing is at 3 feet 3 off the second floor, and we're keeping the second floor finished floor at the same level that it is today. There was also touched on the roof pitch, and we did look at lowering that roof pitch to keep the ridge down. We felt strongly that keeping the 9/12, which is what the original house is, and what the 1995 addition used to match exactly. We've used that both for the raised roof and for the addition. I think that keeping those gables at the same keeps consistency, and I also think lowering the roof pitch significantly to get close to what we've achieved would change the look of the house, in my opinion, more than raising the roof to 3 feet 11 inches. There was a mention about the porch. The porch on the back of the house is obviously to protect what will become the main family entry from weather. Very important when there is not an attached garage. And I don't think it's out of character with a lot of other houses in the neighborhood. We actually modeled it off one that's just down the road that I had looked at with Tyler and Mary Connell, that recent work that they had followed and liked. And then the plantings came up. Obviously, those plantings were planted for privacy. Obviously, they are overgrown, and I think part of this project is investing in improving and upgrading those plantings, but at this time, there's not any intention or desire to take those down. I think they create much needed privacy and probably some sound screening and even dirt from the road and salt from the road. It's that close. And then to address some of Marion's feedback, I first spoke to Marion about this project in September of last year, and I went to her very early and talked about the concept of what we were trying to do. And we talked about a number of things. We talked about the scale. We talked about the addition not dominating the small scale of the new house, which was actually part of what led, not from her, but from our perspective, raising the roof so that that actually was a step down to a very clear addition. We also stepped it in just slightly on the side so that they read as two different masses. We talked about preserving historic elements, a lot of them on the inside. We talked about the windows. We talked a lot about the fireplace. She actually encouraged us to keep the old stair. I think That was one thing that the Liftons felt very strongly from a safety perspective, and Mary Connell can touch on this, but they've had 2 different family members very serious falls since they've lived in the
Indoor
house.
stair or an outdoor stair?
Indoor stair. The only indoor stair is not to code, either the riser height or the width. And we also talked about, the trim details in the front rooms. And Marion was generally positive about what we were trying to do. She absolutely expressed concern about raising the roof height and said that she would welcome continued conversation and dialogue on that. And we wanted that. We hoped for it. We tried to get it. And unfortunately, we were not able to have any of those conversations with her. I understand it's for health. I'd say that with full respect. And obviously, that's not, but it's frustrating that we were hoping to have that, which we haven't been able to. The note that she did submit on Monday, Mark's touched on a little bit, but, a couple of things. She mentioned a step back of the roof, which, to be honest, I don't think I'm reading right because it doesn't make sense in my mind what she's proposing. So I'd like to talk to her more about what that is, but structurally to step back the roof would require a new plate that's not out at the eave, and I can't imagine she's proposing what I'm picturing. So I want to understand that better. She talked about the windows. She actually said in there that 3 windows were being preserved. As is noted on the floor plan, the existing 5 original windows are all to be preserved and to stay. And there's 1 additional new window on the front because, but our goal is to, when we move the front door to the middle, to take the existing window there and use it. So all of the windows on the front would be original. It's not listed as existing because it's moving. She talked about materials. I'd be very happy, and I can obviously provide more information about materials. The roof, as is indicated, is a cedar shingle roof to replace what's there. The trim and the windows would be to preserve the existing. Every double hung would match the existing and the trim details. But again, these are schematic drawings. They are not intended as construction documents. I don't have window schedules at this point.
So what I'm looking at there, what you have up, so we have the current house, top left.
Yes,
Proposed
same
house,
elevation.
Top right.
Yep.
And what does that red line mean?
Again,
Elevation.
I'm sorry.
No?
Those are intended to be where the setback line would pass through the house in elevation view. So basically, if you took this line, so where this line crosses this wall is that point right here. And where this line crosses that wall is here. So all of this is forward of the front yard setback.
Gotcha.
All of that.
Yep.
And footprint-wise, you can see the thin sliver of the new.
Mm-hmm. I see. So that's helpful for me to understand. Okay.
And this was the minimum amount?
I'm sorry?
This is the minimum amount in the front yard setback?
Well, with the entire house being forward of the front yard setback, you'd be left with, you couldn't do anything that wouldn't require a variance that would ultimately end up being usable in any way.
Can I look at the floor plan? And then, I mean, the new kitchen, like obviously, to avoid this piece altogether, we could have come off here. And I think we would have ended up, as I said, this fireplace is open. We've opened this up, open to the sitting area, to the kitchen, to the breakfast area where, the table would be. And I think that if we didn't have this piece, we could have a gap there. I think that, obviously we could come back out. But to try to just come back here, which we did look at, it was a very different look from the back. It was a footprint that sort of filled in the existing, and then this became a setback to the kitchen that came off here, and it ended up getting a very long L off the back.
And how many square feet is the house currently, and how many square feet?
So the square footage
is the
that I have does
proposal?
not include the basement, which is partly crawl space, partly unfinished, a little bit of finished storage, and then under the new is finished. But the square footage of the existing is 1,740 on the first floor and 963 on the second, for a total of 2,703. And the proposed is 2,442 on the first floor, 1,583 on the second, for a total of 4,025. So the change on the first is 702, on the second is 620, and in total is 1,322.
It's almost a 50% increase if I do the math right.
It's going from 2,700 to 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
So,
A little over. Okay.
and from a space standpoint, from a design standpoint, a couple of things. I mean, they have they have 2 children, and right now upstairs there's 2 bedrooms. The girls share a bedroom, and they're in the other bedroom. We were proposing to make the downstairs into the master, and to have 2 relatively small girls' bedrooms and a guest room. The kitchen is the other big piece. That today the kitchen is, I have a picture I'm happy to pass around. It's tiny. It has a 5'11" ceiling at the back that then slopes up, and there's little eyebrow windows, and those are the only windows in the kitchen. So the square footage is a significant increase, but I think we're starting with a very, very small house.
And the historical elements that are being retained, I understand there'll be a number of them inside the house.
Mhm.
But on the outside of the house, if I'm hearing you properly, and I might have missed something, it's just going to be those front windows, but they're going to be moved?
So today, one is moved. So today, as Mark said, the door was originally centered on the house.
Right.
But then this was an addition not that long after it was built, and we are proposing to move the door back to the middle of the house, which
Okay.
goes into the entry. So this is the new window that we would move from here. This is existing, and this is existing, but from 1995.
Okay. Anything else in the front of the house that
So obviously
is going
this
to remain?
is new roof, this is existing
Right.
roof. I mean, from a sort of the shape that the house is in, I mean, it needs new roof, it needs new siding. We would obviously be updating, the corner boards. I mean, we would not leave rotten wood when we were going to do this project. And I do have some pictures of that condition if you want to see them.
Oh, I'm sure there's lots of rotten wood in a house that old. Okay. No, you've answered my question. Thanks.
And I'm happy to keep going, or I'm happy to introduce Tim. As a structural engineer, we brought Tim in to take a look at the current structure to see the state of the house today. We wanted to understand what the proposed changes would mean, as in, could we do this without, affecting the existing framing and taking everything down, because we don't want to take everything down. And also have him take a look and really understand beyond the story of the house through the years on paper, also to really understand from looking at structurally and the foundation and the framing what's been done to the house over the years. So
All right, so let's get him up here.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So really briefly, we generally limit these presentations to 10 minutes, as
I'm
Mark
sorry.
knows, and we've gone a little bit over that 10-minute time limit. So just briefly, if you could tell us,
I
introduce yourself for the
I
record.
prepared a report, but let me just explain the.
Introduce yourself for the record.
Tim
first, please.
DeBartolomeo, Sound Engineering Associates. The reason that Kirtley had brought me in was the sensitivity of the age of the structure and what they were doing to it, and whether or not there was a practical way of modifying the structure so that we didn't really have to replace the existing portions of the existing foundation, or to what degree would you be disturbing the existing structure?
And what's the answer?
Okay. The answer is you can tiptoe around through the structure, and the foundation is in good condition. The structure is overall in good condition. The oldest part of the building, 1732 part of the building, is a traditional post and beam construction. It has been modified dramatically over the years. There's old open mortises in the beams and columns that were presumably diagonal and lateral bracing, as if you would see in an old building that doesn't exist anymore, because they were in the space, what is now the space of the expanded dwelling. So there's a lot of stuff that's been already taken out of this. So you have these relics of old structure that can remain and that we can tiptoe around with new structure inside the walls, down into the foundation.
Okay. And
That kind of stuff.
You've satisfied yourself by actually punching holes in the wall and looking at
I've
these
crawled around, I've gotten into the crawl space, I've looked at the framing, I've gone up into the attic space, into the crawl space in the attic space. I've done everything. I'm satisfied that we can do this.
Does the town engineer look at that study?
Well, the building official would. When
The building department, this would have to go through the building department.
Right.
At some point.
Right.
Okay,
I think
so.
the fundamental question, though, is exactly what of the existing structure can be preserved, and are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's left to preserve? What's left to preserve are some exposed columns, some exposed beams, and the fireplace. The old foundation in the old cellar, there's about 10 feet of foundation that's in its original condition, which is a dry laid stone wall, no mortar. Mortar wasn't invented at that time. The rest of, other than that, the rest of the foundation is mortared stone, brick, concrete block. A concrete slab has been put in. There's steel framing down in the basement right now that's been added over the years. A lot of the framing has been modified within the floor system already because what's been there cannot sustain code minimum loads. So there was when at some point in time, we don't have the records of when that modification to the original dwelling was done. There was an awful lot of structural work done in that house.
Excellent. So Woody, how precise do they need to be as far as what they're keeping and what they're getting rid of? We've run into this issue before where we were told that they're going to keep all of the structure and all of the framing, and I drive by the house and the whole first floor is missing.
We've had difficulty with that. It certainly would be good to clarify here. The walls, windows, ceiling joists, foundation,
Do you mind?
all the way through, it would be good to be sure.
I just don't know
I
if it's in the
think
way
I
of
think
Cal
actually
79.
one of Mark's plans might actually show a good. This is.
I mean, I didn't see, did you do an engineering report?
I'm going to pass that out.
Have you seen this, Woody?
No, just did it. I'm going to pass it out, but if you go to the back of the report, I don't know if I have enough, but if you go to the back report, there's some photos of the interior, especially this one.
I have one too, but
Okay, that's it. There's some photos of the interior. Page, well, if you look at photo page 4 of 6, you'll see on the bottom photo some of the steel columns that have been added there, just to show you some of the retrofitting that's been done. And by the way, there's a stair in the background there that first. A reason that someone would put a column right at the bottom of the stairs, and this is a very unsafe stairs. I almost tumbled down it myself when I visited it. You go right into that steel column. Again, there'll be some repairs to that. But on page 5, there's an old exposed rough-hewn timber column as part of the kitchen. These are pretty much what you see inside the dwelling. And on the last page, you see a little bit more of the same kind of idea where the column and the beam is exposed. But that is, in fact, that was the corner of the building.
Interesting.
So the space has been expanded beyond it.
So I guess the question is what is going to remain?
So this stuff will remain. And in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Curtly, if there's opportunities to expose more of this stuff, we will.
Those are the two existing, and there's also one that's exposed partially.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh,
So the three filled
Yeah, Martin.
structural beams there are the, okay, thank you, are the existing posts. And, the one in the kitchen that we looked at, we were trying to figure out if it was structural or not. I think you slid a piece of paper under it on the counter to show me that was
partially,
I thought it was.
so I think it's been modified. I believe it's partially structural and partially partially made to fit into the countertop.
Woody, do you need time to
Wow,
get
sorry.
details on this?
Yeah, there's so many questions, it's hard to know where to start.
So does it make sense to continue this hearing so that the applicant can provide more information?
Yeah, sure.
So we've had, not just once, we've had several issues where, structural engineers come in and said, everything's fine, we can build on it, we're going to preserve the joists, we're going to preserve the walls, we're going to preserve all of this, and then they have to come back. And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to understand, and since we're just getting your report now, I haven't had a chance to review it, nobody's had a chance to review it, so we kind of want to understand exactly what is going to be preserved. And that's not to say that you have to preserve anything or any of it, but the more of it that you are maintaining, the more sense it makes for us to say, okay, this is a viable structure that you can build on top of. And what we encourage, and it hasn't happened, I don't think, but we encourage you to actually do the exploration. Punch a hole in the wall and see if there's a beam there that can support a second story.
We're happy to do that, but based on what I've seen so far, the existing structure in this oldest part of the building has been dramatically, significantly structurally altered.
Right.
The only things that remain that look to have some antique value are what is exposed. The floor beams have all been reinforced; they've been sistered. The walls have all been strengthened. And that kind of stuff. So to the extent, we would preserve those items that are exposed, and anything that is found that is worth exposing and leaving, we would do. So.
But if you're telling me that you're just going to rip down all those walls and build new walls in the same location, then my comment would be, why wouldn't you do that in a conforming location?
Right. No.
So that's why we need to understand exactly what's going to remain and why we have to build over this. We're saying that the reason is the zoning law's changed. I've got a structure that's outside of the compliant area, and I want to preserve that structure and build on top of it.
But what I'm saying is that there is not a lot of structure to preserve other than what's exposed now.
Right, but if you're not using, I'm not talking for historic value.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
This board really, we're not the ARB. We're not here to design your house for you. What I'm saying is, if we're removing a substantial portion of this non-conforming structure that is outside of the building envelope, then why wouldn't we just put it back in the building envelope?
Right.
That's all.
Understood.
So
well, I'm confident that we're not going to be removing large portions of the structure to put what this addition is. We're going to be
Well, wait a
tiptoeing
minute.
through the structure.
Aren't you taking off the ceiling and the whole roof?
Yes, but we're not touching. We're going to go through the first floor. That's going to be a selective
First floor
demolition.
walls? Would
to
the first floor
floors.
walls stay?
The walls
Existing
the
first
walls may
floor
be
walls.
open, but they will stay. Other than what's.
Well, that's the kind of thing that'd be good
I
to
would love
clarify.
to, yeah, I mean, my first conversation actually with Tim was, if we were to raise the roof, can we do it without taking down these walls? And at Mark's suggestion, actually, that's what we wanted to be able to say to you that we had explored. So that was where we started, was if we want to raise the roof, what kind of structure are we looking at? Are we looking at taking down this house and starting over? And the answer that we came to was, no, we're looking at actually continuing what's been done to this house over the years, which is where we need to, selectively adding structure, possibly from the new roof, next to the existing framing, all the way down to a sound foundation that is there. So that was, the question was, do the walls need to come down to add the 3'11" and the answer, and we have not done demo yet, and we can do that, but the answer from what we've seen to date is that no, they do not. So that was the question that we started with, just wanted to address that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, and that's sort of what we're getting at. So I think what staff, if you work with staff, figure out exactly what's going to stay, what's going to go. I don't care about preserving it from I care about preserving it from a historical perspective, but my decision here isn't based on that. It's more of, if you're just going to tear the thing down anyways, then why are we granting you a variance, right? And that's
never been the owner's intent.
Yes, no, I know, but we've had experiences where it wasn't the owner's intent. They open up the wall, and all of a sudden, it can't support the structure that they thought it could support. So, we'd like you to do that extra bit of homework for us, so that we can get some clear answers to that.
Understanding that we've gone over, would you like to or be willing to hear very briefly from Mary Connell-Lifton, or would you rather?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Coming up
yeah, you're hiding
the
from the
board. Thank you. And I have probably longer remarks, and so if this is going to be continued, I'm happy to come back. But I just wanted to say on a personal note, because this house is extremely personal for us, and some of the stuff from, all this history that was shared with us when we bought the house and that we've enjoyed. So we are the fourth family to live in this house since 1732. So you're going to spend a little time with that math. But we bought the house from the Carnahans, who lived there for 55 years and raised 4 daughters there. And this, we bought this house in the depths of the recession in 2009. But I think what resonated with them is we wrote them a deeply personal letter about our love for old homes. This was our first house, but we both grew up in. My husband and I both grew up, and he's sorry he can't be here, by the way, but we both grew up in pre-war houses and have a really nice, my husband grew up in Bedford, an appreciation for older homes. But what we expressed to them in this letter was a commitment to this house, being the fourth family. And so for us, this process, which Curtly has outlined, we've been working on this for over a year, so all of these iterations, we were kind of hoping to come to you with kind of a best and final. We really think that we are asking for the minimum amount of variances, minimum adjustments, because we've already done all this work, all these iterations, and so we're happy to go through it and respond to any of this feedback. But for me, this is deeply personal, and we do feel a real sense of stewardship to this house. I am confident that another homeowner would not feel this, and I see so many homes in this town torn down, including the house right next to us, an 1848 farmhouse, and now we've got three-story houses over there. We want this project to work, and I know you're talking about kind of, can we move it back? We did consider that, and it's on the table for sure. This is not the least expensive route for us. In fact, we are committing a lot of our hard-earned money to doing something that I think will wind up being more expensive, because we are trying to integrate it. And I think what Curtly and Mark also have emphasized here, and I just want to reiterate this on a personal level, is I think a lot of what's really special about this house is, and you'll notice this in the letters you see from our neighbors who come and spend time in this home, a lot of what's special about this house is the interior. And I think what's so nice, you see the shaded part is new, but all of this is this old, beautiful home. And I think what's so nice about this design is it really celebrates that, and we are certainly committed to preserving as much as we can. This is why we hired Curtly, because we really want to do a very thoughtful, tasteful design, and not, be it on a list of houses in Darien that get demolished and some developer comes in and builds one of these huge things. So I appreciate your time, and we can continue this conversation, but I did just want to express those notes.
Yeah,
so
thank you very much. No, I appreciate it. Appreciate what you're trying to do with the house. We just want to make sure it's done, the right way. And Woody, I think, would echo the sentiment. When we've run into these issues in the past, and we've actually had the engineers do this extra bit of work, homeowners have found that it was A, more cost effective to build in a different location, or B, that what they were really trying to preserve wasn't worth preserving in the first place. and sometimes projects just move in a different direction. And-
No, I understand, and I think we're all clear that it would be cheaper
Yeah.
to bulldoze this
Yeah.
house
Yeah.
and build a new one behind the setback. I feel like that will break my heart.
Yeah, no, we don't want to see that happen
yeah.
either.
So, okay, that's it. I don't know if you're
Yeah,
closing
just a
statement.
couple of things just to clarify. I know that, Mike, you asked about, the punching the holes in the walls and things like that, but it's important to note that this is, the original part of the house is post and beam construction.
Right.
So the exterior walls aren't load-bearing walls per se.
Okay.
But Tim will correct me if I'm wrong, but, as opposed to stick-built
Right.
of, normal framing, you're not gonna pull, rip out the drywall and find out, oh my God, we have to take all this stuff out because structurally not sound. You're not, and that's what I think Tim was trying to allude to, that everything that we pretty much need to see with respect to its structural integrity is already exposed.
But as I understood it, the post and beams, I mean, you've got a open mortise here, which was probably a supporting structure to the beam above it, right?
Well, it was offering some rigidity.
Right.
From
So-
racking. So yeah, so the,
No,
but we're absolutely willing to do what you're asking to do, and we don't want to get into a situation where we have to change the program. I mean, that's not good for anybody.
Perfect. All right, so what I'm going to suggest is we continue this to,
I have a quick question.
okay, go ahead.
Could you speak a bit about the garage? The garage is coming down, is that right?
It is,
And a new one's being built,
it is.
and there's no problems with that within the buildable area.
It is within the setback.
That isn't part of the application, actually. We could take that out and build it as of right later, or.
And what goes on there's a second floor on the garage?
Yes, there is.
What's
And
going
right
there?
now, it is unfinished storage. It is not planning to have a bathroom or, but it is
Okay.
possibly, it is possibly future. We wanted the second floor up there, so it is high enough to have a second floor and the stairs. And possible office, possible, home, gym. I mean, we've talked about things. To be honest, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
But it is fully within setbacks, and with the garage and the proposed addition, we are well under building coverage. So there's no variance attached to the garage.
Okay.
When you come back, if you don't mind, you talked about some other options that you looked at for
Yep.
plans. If you could maybe bring one or two, just so we know what you kind of looked at and gives us a
Like them ahead of
sense.
time, or is it better to just?
Yeah, it'd probably be best if they were submitted ahead of time, right, Woody?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And they won't be as developed, obviously.
That's
but-
fine,
but
just the concept, we're just.
I have a, poor Mary Connell, I have a stack, yes.
Well,
I'd be
do you
happy.
have any options where there's less of the building imposing into the front setback area?
From a footprint standpoint?
You
Or
know,
from a bulk
less-
on the
less
second
volume-
floor?
Less
Less
volume in the setback.
If
area.
I
Do you
may.
have any plans like that?
Yeah, I mean, we tried one where we actually turned the gable the other way.
Uh-huh.
And
Because, I mean, that's going to be, speaking only for myself, the big issue that's got to be dealt with, and which is, why so much in the setback area, and is this really the minimum
Do you mind if I
adjustment
bring
necessary?
this forward?
Let me just finish.
I'm so sorry.
What I'm saying, if you don't mind. Okay? And whether or not that's the minimum adjustment necessary. I'm struggling with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want you to think that by coming back here that it's going to solve that problem, because if you have other plans where there's less volume in the setback, a smaller adjustment, it would be helpful for me to see that, okay?
I'd love to get feedback from sort of the closest one that we developed, if you are willing to look at. I mean, this is one where this.
Well, if you just maybe give that to
Sure.
Woody, because you're coming back.
I'll send it
Next
so that I
month.
don't have my drawings on it. Okay, absolutely.
We'll go ahead and continue this hearing till, what did we say, March 18th?
March 18th.
March 18th.
Is now the appropriate time to say that unfortunately I'm not here and we may have to wait a month after that? Obviously, we can do that in the office, but.
Yeah, just coordinate that with Woody. Honestly, it's
And maybe I don't need to be if it's more about the structural.
It's more about the structural, and it's more about maybe a differing plan, which is what Chuck is talking about, so maybe that does fall on your shoulders.
Yeah.
As a team, you guys got to figure that out, but if you want to submit things, we get packets we get plenty of paper to review, so.
Woody, what's the date in April?
April 22nd, I was going to say. There is the option of continuing that further with the applicant's permission.
Okay, so, I mean, we could put it in April so that the architect could be here.
Yes.
I think it is a fair point to say that the plans that I will and happily will submit are ones that we did not select because they don't achieve what we wanted to achieve from the interior space. And also, focusing solely on the front means that when we turned that ridge, we had just a huge looking house from the driveway, and they didn't want that. So to Mary Connell's point to me just now, I don't want to submit something and falsely imply that we're open to absolutely anything when we've worked really hard to come up with a plan that meets their needs.
No,
And also-
and I'm not suggesting, I mean, it's a wonderful plan, and I'm sure it'll be a beautiful home. But from where we sit, where I sit, I've got to deal with what we call the volume in the setback and the so-called minimum adjustment necessary, so.
I just don't want to give a wrong impression that we are,
No, so your presentation, you'll be able to explain to us why those plans didn't work. And if you want to submit a written statement along with the plans and say, we looked at this didn't work because of X. We looked at Y, that didn't work because of Z, right? Type of, just give us the compare and contrast.
Okay.
And that would be super helpful.
Well, and I'll just throw in a point about it, is that at some level, I think it's a little bit more attractive and maybe less volume in the front, but I will say that kind of Curtly talked me out of it because part of the trick of this, as you can imagine, is we're trying to marry this historic element. And so by changing that gable, we're actually being inconsistent with the original house. So we're also trying to respond to the historic society's concerns. So that's a little bit of an issue, and I get it, it's not your purview, but I do understand that this board also is very respectful of that, and we certainly are trying to be very respectful of those elements too. So I think what you'll find is that it's probably a minimal, a little bit less bold, but then you kind of fail on some other objectives that we also consider super important. So I just want to make that point.
That's great.
Okay,
Thank you
all
very much.
Very much.
I
Thank you.
appreciate the
Now,
feedback.
we went over.
I know,
time a little
thank
bit.
you.
We appreciate you
Yes.
giving us
Thank you,
that
guys.
extra time, but as you can see, it's a fairly complex.
Okay. Deliberations and decisions.
We don't have to make any.
We don't have to make any. How about that?
Two applications.
Other business?
Please,
What do you got for us, Woody?
couple of minutes, please.
Let's see if we can keep this
Mike,
moving.
Chuck, Jeff, and Vic.
Approval of the January 15th minutes. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Approval of the January 15th minutes. Mike, Chuck, Jeff, Vic. Chuck, did you look at those?
Yeah, I thought
I think
I respond by
Didn't we
email.
already respond by email?
Yeah, we just have to
Okay, all
formally
right, formally, make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approval of the January 29th minutes. That's Mike, Chuck, Jeff, Vic, Barb, and Dan gets involved in that one. I think that got approved by email as well.
Yep.
I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I think, Woody, with the application taking as long as we did, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
we'll cut it off there. Channel 79, we are finished up. Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jeff,